By the end, you will have BrowseForge AI running locally. Type English in Streamlit and an LLM drives a real Playwright browser through MCP. This is for you if you already write a little Python and you want browser automation without hand coding every click and scroll. If you skip the MCP layer, every new site becomes brittle Playwright selectors you rewrite by hand. Picture viewport bay, a glass command rail where your sentence launches a headed browser and Playwright MCP returns snapshots the model can read. The method is snapshots navigate to the URL, snapshot the accessibility tree, interact by element ref, then report back in Markdown. MCP is Model Context Protocol, a standard way for an LLM to call tools like a browser, file system, or database. Playwright MCP exposes real browser tools, navigate, click, scroll, snapshot, without you writing selector code for every step. The MCP agent framework wraps an agent, attaches an OpenAI compatible LLM, and routes tool calls to registered MCP servers. Next, we install the Python stack BrowseForge needs on your machine. Open a terminal in the BrowseForge folder and install the Python packages from requirements. txt. Streamlit is the web UI, MCP agent orchestrates the browser agent, and OpenAI is the client library for your LLM endpoint. Playwright MCP runs through Node, so confirm Node. JS is installed before your first command. If Node is missing, npx cannot spawn the Playwright MCP server and initialization fails with a subprocess error. Open MCP agent, config yam. This file registers the Playwright MCP server for the agent. Execution engine Asyncio tells MCP agent to run async tool calls, which matches Streamlit's event loop bridge. Add the MCP section header. The MCP block is where you list every MCP server this agent may call. Indent servers under MCP. Servers holds named subprocess launches. BrowseForge only needs Playwright here. Name this server Playwright. It must match server names in the agent. The name Playwright is what your agent references in server names. Set command to npx so Node can fetch Playwright MCP. npx downloads Playwright MCP on first run. Without it, the browser tools never appear. Pass the Playwright MCP package as the npx argument. Playwright team MCP latest is the official browser tool server. Pin a version in production if you prefer. Add the OpenAI section for your LM endpoint. MCP agent reads model settings here. Secrets stay in a separate YAM file. Set default a model to Git for Mini for fast tool routing. Mini is enough for navigate and summarize tasks. Swap to a larger model for complex multi-tab flows. Copy MCP YAM example to MCP agent secrets YAML and paste your OpenAI API key. The same OpenAI block works with Ollama. Point base URL to localhost and put appeared key Ollama in secrets. Now open main py. BrowseForge's entire app lives in this one Streamlit file. Asyncio lets MCP agent run awaitable tool calls while Streamlit stays responsive on reruns. Import OS for environment and file checks. We use OS, gitinv and path checks before calling the LLM. Import Streamlit for the web UI. Streamlit reruns the script on every button click. Session state keeps the agent alive. Import MCP, the application shell for MCP servers. MCP app manages server lifetimes. You enter it once and reuse the context. Import agent, the class that holds instructions and tool access. Agent connects your LLM to named MCP servers like Playwright. Import OpenAI for OpenAI compatible chat. This works with OpenAI and Ollama because both expose the same API shape. Import request params to control history and token limits. Request params is how you turn conversation memory on for multi-step browser tasks. Set the Streamlit page title and wide layout. Wide layout gives room for the command box and markdown response side by side. Add the page heading. This is what users see above the command text area on localhost. Guard session state so setup runs once per browser tab. Without this guard, Streamlit reruns would recreate the agent on every click. Initialize the initialized flag to false. First rerun sets up MCP, later reruns skip expensive subprocess startup. Create MCP app and store it in session state. The name is internal logging only. Pick something unique per app. Create a dedicated asyncio event loop for MCP calls. Streamlit is sync by default. This loop lets run until complete drive the agent. Register that loop as the current asyncio loop. If you skip set event loop, await calls inside MCP, agent may attach to the wrong loop. Define async setup agent, runs once to wire MCP and the LM. Keeping setup async matches MCP agents initialize and attach LM APIs. Only initialize when the flag is still false. This is the inner guard. Pairs with the session state block above. Start the MCP app context manager. Run returns an async context you enter to spawn configured MCP servers. Enter the context and store the running app handle. After this line, Playwright MCP subprocess is alive and tools are listed. Create the browser agent. Agent is the object that receives your natural language command. Name the agent browser for logs. The name helps when you add more agents later. Keep it short. Set the system instruction for browsing behavior. Good instructions mention navigate, click, scroll, and markdown summaries. Attach the Playwright MCP server by name. This string must match the key under MCP servers in your config yum. Close the agent constructor. You now have an agent object waiting for initialize it. Initialize the agent so it discovers Playwright tools. Initialize connects to MCP and caches the tool list for the LM. Attach the OpenAI compatible LLM to the agent. Attach a loom is the bridge. Your Streamlit command becomes tool routing prompts. Mark initialization complete. Next rerun skips straight to generator struct. Define random MCP agent called on every run command click. This function is what Streamlit's loop run until complete executes. Check for credentials before calling the LLM. Without a key or secrets file, the agent should fail fast with a clear message. Return a friendly error when credentials are missing. This is the message users see in the response panel. Copy the example secrets file to fix it. A common beginner misses clicking run command before creating MCP agent. Secrets, yum. You get the credential error on screen. Fix it by copying the example secrets file and adding your API key. Then the same command reaches Playwright. Ensure setup agent ran before generating a response. First command pays the MCP startup cost. Later commands reuse the warm agent. Call generator star with the user's command. The LLM reads your sentence and chooses Playwright MCP tools automatically. Pass the text area text as message. This is the natural language command from Streamlit. Enable conversation history for multi-step browsing. Use a history true. Let's follow up commands like scroll more, reuse prior page context. Close the generated strat call. The return string is markdown you render under response. Return the markdown result to Streamlit. Streamlit stores this in session state so reruns keep the last answer visible. Add the command text area. This is where users type English instructions for the browser agent. Add the run command button with a callback. The callback sets is processing so the spinner runs on the next rerun. When processing is true, execute the agent. Streamlit pattern button flips state. Next rerun does the async work. Run the async agent on the stored event loop. You should see a headed browser open while Playwright MCP executes tool calls. Persist the response across reruns. Without last result, the markdown answer disappears when Streamlit refreshes. Clear processing so the button re-enables. User can send a follow-up command with history still active. Rerun to render the response panel. Rerun refreshes UI with last result populated. Show the response when we have one. This block renders the markdown report from snapshots op. Render the agent markdown under response. Hold this beat. You should see navigation summary text match the live browser. Launch BrowserForge with Streamlit run main. Py and open the local URL in your browser. Type a multi-step command like navigate to GitHub, scroll, and summarize. Then click Run command. Hold the reveal. A headed browser opens. Playwright snapshots the page, and Markdown lands in the response panel. Watch what breaks if you skip node. MPX never starts and initialization throws a subprocess error in the response box. Snaps a loop on one line navigate, snapshot the accessibility tree, interact by ref report markdown. That is BrowserForge. When the next web task lands as a sentence instead of a script, open viewport bay, run snapskill op, and let Playwright MCP click while you read the report.